Let's talk about solutions in a moment. But first, I want to just establish what is the level of risk that we're facing. I mean, you mentioned a moment ago avian flu that you dealt with, and there's also swine flu. So these diseases came from poultry and from pork production. How dangerous were those outbreaks? How bad could it have been? And, if there are future outbreaks from meat, how bad could it be?
Well, I think we now know, even if the risk is relatively small, the consequence when a disease such as COVID-19 actually becomes transmissible between humans, the consequences are enormous. I'm going to get into perhaps a little bit of detail here about different types of avian influenza, but the type that broke out in 2004, 2005 is categorized as H5N1, and it has to do with aspects of the virus. And this particular avian influenza was transmitted from wild birds in northern China originally to domestic poultry production systems. And within about a year or 2 years, it spread to almost every country in the world. And it has a very low likelihood and a low possibility of infecting humans, but between 2005 and 2012, about 700 people did die of avian influenza. And there were 2 or 3 reported cases in Indonesia where there was no link between the poultry and the people who were infected. In other words, there were a couple of small cases of human-to-human transmission. So the fact that you can have a case with a wild bird infecting a domestic poultry flock, and then because of the way the large-scale production systems of poultry in the world today, it can spread quickly around the world. Swine flu is a little different in that the influenza outbreak of 2009, which was an H1N1 outbreak, we believe occurred or originated in either Southern California or Northern Mexico. Now that many people who, of course, heard about that thought, okay, well, nothing bad happened. And it's true, it was a relatively benign or non-virulent type of influenza, but several billion people actually ended up getting affected by it. We were just fortunate 10 or 12 years ago that H1N1 was not a highly virulent strain. Those 2 examples are linked by the fact that the intermediary host, the one that was between the wild reservoir and humans, was the domestic animals that it infected. And we've been fortunate in the case of H5N1 that it's not turned out to be very easily transmitted from chickens to humans. You cannot get it by eating a chicken that was infected with H5N1. You probably wouldn't want to because it is so deadly among chickens that most people wouldn't want to or would not either buy or sell a dead chicken of that nature. In the case of the swine flu, I don't believe there's any evidence whatsoever of any transmission between pork consumption and human consumption. It's more the fact that these are respiratory diseases, the respiratory problem within the chicken and the respiratory problem within the pig, and that is the way it can potentially be transmitted. So it's not so much the danger of actually eating the meat, it's more the danger of these viruses having an opportunity to infect a species that is, produced in enormous numbers and allows the virus to mutate fairly quickly.
Yeah. So then I guess the jump to humans from those animals would be by infecting farm workers or people working in slaughterhouses or something like that?
It could, and in fact, there were quite a few instances of market vendors in places like Indonesia, Vietnam, China, et cetera, who were slaughtering chickens, who did get infected. And there were people who brought home, a lot of these countries, of course, consumers actually buy the live chicken and they bring it home and then they kill it. And so there's a much greater direct contact between the live animal and humans in those environments than going down to your Safeway or Giant and getting a prepackaged bird. So that level of risk is fortunately fairly low, but it's not zero.
Right. And I suppose if we compound that risk times billions and billions of livestock around the world, we're just carrying risk all the time.